My name is Patrick Gibbons, and with me today I have two colleagues on my right, my wife, Paula Gibbons, and Cheryl Grace. I'm a full-time resident of Saugeen Shores, and I've been a taxpayer in Bruce County for over 25 years. I am a supporter of Bruce Power and appreciate the benefits that we have realized in this community. I will be speaking to 4 issues as shown on the slide, each of which calls into question the validity of the environmental assessment of the proposed DGR for low and intermediate level waste in Kincardine. The hosting agreement, which is to clearly describe benefits as well as possible hazards, dangers, and risks involved with a DGR for radioactive waste, falls short on the second half of this mandate. While the 21-page document spends 8 full pages describing financial benefits, only 1 sentence even suggests danger. The hosting agreement makes no mention of the following widely researched issues relating to radioactive waste siting: stigma effect, property value decline, decline in tourism, decline in people wishing to retire in Bruce County. The impact of the hosting agreement on Saugeen Shores is evident now, and if approved, would increase exponentially with construction and operation licenses for the DGR. As an adjacent community, Saugeen Shores is referenced 37 times in the hosting agreement, yet only OPG and the past mayor of Kincardine signed the hosting agreement. More alarming still are the many sections of the hosting agreement that allows OPG to revise and amend this agreement. The following amendments can be completed without seeking the approval from citizens: when any milestone date is missed or delayed, to extend the operation of a DGR beyond 2035, to enlarge the size of the DGR, to accept waste from a new nuclear reactor, to accept low and intermediate level waste from anywhere else, and to accept decommissioning waste. All of these situations have negative impacts on the residents of Saugeen Shores far into the future. Yet, we have no representation within the hosting agreement. Why would our elected officials allow this to occur? In October 2004, the mayors of the municipalities of Bruce County who make up the Bruce County Council were not all in support of the hosting agreement. There was nothing in the hosting agreement for 3 of the Bruce municipalities, and despite promises from the Kincardine mayor, there was nothing in it for the county of Bruce. One mayor stated, "The environmental aspect of this is a concern for me." Another mayor stated, "They're going to pound the heck out of the roads." And a third mayor stated that over the long term, it could undermine the efforts to promote Bruce County as Ontario's natural retreat. It was reported in 2004, November the 10th, that 2 agreements were reached involving OPG and Bruce County, which guaranteed $250,000 to Bruce County Council. However, in trying to locate these documents, the Bruce County clerk stated that these documents do not exist. Madam Chair, because of the confusion on this issue, I respectfully request an undertaking to be initiated to confirm the agreements between OPG and the County of Bruce do in fact exist. The hosting agreement allows for decommissioning waste from any and all existing or future reactors. As has been confirmed during these hearings, OPG's plans include decommissioning waste from all Ontario reactors to be placed in this DGR. Why is decommissioning waste not part of this construction application? The hosting agreement allows for the inclusion of low and intermediate level waste that the parties agree to, possibly allowing for radioactive waste from other provinces or other countries. Again, Saugeen Shores and other adjacent communities do not have a say in the type of waste or where it comes from. The size of the DGR and the length of time for which radioactive waste will be accepted are also left wide open in the hosting agreement. Section 7 of the hosting agreement discusses the property value protection plan. And it shows that it's a very limiting statement that requires radioactive contamination on one's property during the operation of the DGR caused by the DGR before 1 cent is paid out by OPG. As well, the onus of proof of contamination and the related property depreciation and all associated costs would be the responsibility of the property owner. OPG states that the Concardant Property Value Protection Plan is in line with a similar agreement in the town of Port Hope. It is not. Port Hope's plan includes a clear statement where you may apply for compensation if you have realized loss on sale of property, loss of rental income, mortgage renewal difficulties, or you have incurred costs related to the delayed sale or rental. Who is OPG protecting with their radioactive contamination requirements in the Concardant Property Value Protection Plan? Calling this a Property Value Protection Plan is a disgrace. This is more correctly OPG's Corporation Protection Plan. The phone poll to determine community support had to be completed with a positive result by February 28, 2005, or the agreement was null and void. This deadline imposed by OPG caused the municipality of Concardant to use an undemocratic process, a phone poll, to gauge the support. Since I will be discussing the poll in more detail later, at this time I'll just make a couple of comments. This phone poll ruled out the democratic secret ballot of a referendum or plebiscite that had been promised by both mayoralty candidates and several councillors in the 2003 Concardant municipal election. OPG also stated that a referendum would be used to decide the fate of the DGR. But obviously, OPG wanted to fast-track this proposal. It was stated that a phone poll controlled by the proponent would be more likely to get a response from 50% of the adult residents. A true democratic process may not have that result. With this decision, OPG eliminated a democratic process. Section 4 of the hosting agreement, and Schedule A, details the payments to be made by OPG to Concardant and the adjacent communities. What is expected of the communities involved? What are the conditions that OPG has set prior to Saugeen Shores or other named towns receiving 32 payments over 30 years? The named adjacent communities must, in good faith, exercise their best efforts to achieve milestones and, in good faith, exercise their best efforts to support the operation of the DGR. 11 times in the hosting agreement, these statements are made. If one community, however, does not exercise best efforts to support this project for 30 years, the payments could stop for all communities involved. Each town's mayor is expected to write letters of support and make submissions to this joint review panel and to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. OPG and WMO have agreed to assist the town mayors in the writing of these letters of support. Milestones requiring support from mayors include obtaining licenses to construct and operate the DGR. As well, OPG would require total support from town officials for all future OPG amendments to the hosting agreement. For decades, many learned scholars have considered such payments as bribery, hush money, and being morally corrupt. In 2005, Dr. Alan Marshall, social scientist, carried out the most comprehensive independent study of the social and ethical aspects of siting a nuclear waste facility. He summarized the studies from other researchers. Kleindendorf says no amount of compensation makes up for living next to a radioactive waste site. Schrader-Frechette warns that the use of compensation confuses and upsets any notion of pure consent. Disparities in negotiating strength might arise purely through well-financed interests employing misinformation and propaganda. Outen states, when financial compensation is introduced, it is likely that some will perceive the process as being somewhat morally corrupt. The mayors who on behalf of the town received the money from OPG have spoken to this joint review panel because several sections of the hosting agreement requires them to exercise their best efforts to support the licensing and operation of the DGR. In summary, this hosting agreement is fatally flawed. The known potential dangers and hazards of constructing, operating, decommissioning, and abandoning a DGR on this site over a span of over hundreds of thousands of years, while some of its contents remain highly radioactive, are not disclosed to the residents of Kincardine nor the adjacent communities. The adjacent communities never have and never will have a say in this hosting agreement that seriously impacts their lives and the lives of future generations literally forever. While we were told that the County of Bruce had a monetary agreement with OPG with regard to the DGR, we have recently been advised that these documents do not exist. OPG has not clearly and completely confirmed what the final size of the DGR would be, the final volume of waste to be buried there, whether massive amounts of decommissioning waste and used fuel will ever be included, and whether radioactive waste from other provinces or jurisdictions could ever be included for burial. The so-called Property Value Protection Plan provides no assurance that residents will not see their life savings greatly devalued if locating this DGR causes the stigma effect seen in other communities. For OPG to insist that a resident must demonstrate radioactive contamination of their property under ridiculous time constraints is just irresponsible and an attempt to take advantage of residents. The phone poll was an undemocratic attempt to prove overwhelming support that was just not present. And finally, the 30 or more years of monetary payments to Kincardine and adjacent communities in exchange for the mayors of these towns exercising their best efforts to support all aspects of the DGR has already caused municipal governments to show support because this hosting agreement forces them to do so. As previously stated, the method used by Kincardine's consultants in 2005 to gauge support of its residents for OPG's proposal were seriously flawed. I will now expand on my concerns that many people, including Kincardine's present mayor, have expressed about the polling process. My focus will be on the process used, the preamble and question posed, and the manipulation of the results. On January the 7th, 2005, Marie Wilson interviewed then former Mayor Larry Kramer, who is, as you know, Kincardine's present mayor, at his request. To commence the interview, Kramer said that he was disappointed with the polling process, which began in Kincardine on the previous day. He said both mayoralty candidates, Glenn Sutton and himself, called for a full public referendum. He went on to say, What is needed is a full democratic process that isn't open to even a whiff of questioning. Kramer stated that town hall meetings where the mayor and council are open to questions about the deal, the use of scrutineers, secret ballots, also need to be part of the process. None of this took place. Kramer said that he did not believe that the telephone poll process was an acceptable method of gauging public support for such an important issue. The interview ended with Kramer stating that we need a proper democratic vote that we can hold up to the world and be proud of. He said it did not happen. The consulting firm Strategic Counsel was paid for by OPG. Their process left respondents without the confidentiality of a secret ballot, which could very well influence how they answered the poll. Just months prior to the poll, the town asked the consultant to have the head of household respond to the poll, not just for herself or himself, but for all adults living in the residence. While I understand that this process was amended in the 11th hour due to public outcry, the consultant's report on the poll results continues to refer to the number of households that were contacted and the number of residents that this represented. The number of people spoken to on the phone was never clearly stated. The number or percentage of seasonal residents who were contacted by phone or mail does not appear in the consultant's report. The fact that the poll was taken in the dead of winter, immediately after the Christmas-New Year's break, no doubt greatly reduced the number of seasonal as well as permanent residents who could have been available to respond to the question. Approaching residents by phone is not only an infringement on their privacy, but also jeopardizes each person's confidentiality and identity. Prior to the question being asked, a preamble was read. Key points of the preamble are: Concordant Council has expressed its support for a DGR. The DGR will permanently isolate radioactive waste. The DGR will provide significant economic benefits to residents, and no high-level waste will be in the DGR. However, Town Council is mentioned 3 times endorsing the project. Would this sway the interviewee? This preamble provided no information about the hazards or potential dangers involved with the construction or operation or decommissioning or abandonment of the DGR. The unproven safety case was overstated. Economic benefits to residents were overstated. The term permanently isolated is just false. And the radioactivity of some of the intermediate level waste is equivalent to that of high level waste. The question asked was, do you support the establishment of a facility for the long-term management of low and intermediate level waste at the Western Waste Management Facility? Respondents without a connection to the nuclear industry would have no idea to what this question is referring. The question used the word facility with no mention of DGR, nuclear, or radioactive. Although it was required by the hosting agreement, the question is neither clear nor complete. It does not state the issue. There is no mention of the potential harm or danger that is associated with nuclear waste. If nothing else, the question was misleading. The phone poll results were manipulated. The consultant broke down the responses into 5 groups: yes, no, neutral, don't know, refuse to answer. The consultant then combined responses 4 and 5 and came up with the following results: yes, 60%, no, 22%, neutral, 13%, don't know, refuse to answer, 5%. The consultant combined the neutral responses, and the don't know and the refuse to answer responses, and threw them out. This gave a false result of 73% yes response. The consultant reported that 69% of the eligible residents responded to the poll. Therefore, the total percentage of yes respondents out of the total eligible residents would be 60% of 69%, which is 41%. The statistics were seriously manipulated. At most, 41% of the eligible residents said yes to this proposal as a result of the faulty phone poll. In summary, using a phone poll to gauge public support was undemocratic. Even the mayor says so. The preamble and question were misleading, and the results were manipulated. If a secret ballot were held today, with the knowledge that OPG and WMO are planning on a second DGR in Bruce County for all of Canada's used nuclear fuel, what would the results be? The current media relations director for NWMO wrote an article in the Concordant News in January 2005, just prior to the community poll on the DGR, that will shed some light on the above question. Marie Wilson said, "If the day were ever to come when the Bruce became the recipient of all of Canada's spent fuel, it would be catastrophic." She went on to say that economic efforts such as tourism or the development of agriculturally related industries would be destroyed. No one is going to want meat that is processed next to a mega-sized spent fuel facility, proven safety record or no. She went on to ask, would families vacation at Huron Park Campground if a large spent fuel facility were next door? As a summary of the phone poll process, I believe that the preamble in question was biased, inaccurate, and incomplete. The question asked was misleading. The poll results were manipulated. Various methods were used by OPG and NWMO and their regular stable of consulting firms to disseminate their propaganda. None of these methods could be considered true citizen participation or engagement. The purpose of OPG open houses and displays are to distribute OPG, DGR promotional literature, to hand out toys for children and keychains and pens for adults, to provide biased monologue about their proposal, to collect data on the number of people in attendance, and then create reports based on this insignificant data. Information on potential hazards and dangers are neither discussed nor presented at OPG and WMO open houses or displays. The objective is not to enable residents to have a voice or an opinion or to participate in planning of the project in the community. The goal of the open house and the mobile display for OPG and WMO is not public participation. Yet, OPG has not adhered to the environmental impact statement guidelines, which state, public participation is a central objective of the overall review process. Meaningful public participation requires the proponent to address concerns of the general public regarding the anticipated and potential environmental effects of the project. In preparing the environmental impact statement, the proponent is required to engage residents and organizations in all affected communities. Investigating Arnstein's research on citizen participation, it becomes clear that the OPG NWMO consultation process is focused on what Dr. Sherry Ernstine, social scientist, calls non-participation. The bottom rung of the participation ladder is manipulation. This rung describes a level of non-participation that has been contrived by some to be substituted for genuine participation. Their real objective is not to enable people to participate in the planning or conducting of programs, but to enable power holders to educate the participants. For comparison, the sixth rung of the participation ladder is partnership, which enables citizens to negotiate and engage in trade-offs with traditional power holders. However, my personal experience with NWMO over the past 2 years has been that they refuse to attend public town hall meetings to discuss nuclear waste with citizens. I would not consider this engaging the citizens. The OPG NWMO open houses have been perpetually poorly attended, usually with less than a dozen attendees, who include the municipal officials who are promoting the event. However, the OPG NWMO spin doctors inevitably use their creative writing skills to author reports with misleading conclusions based upon statistically insignificant numbers. If in 2005 the residents of Kincardine had known of the cumulative effects involving the DGR, what would the poll results have been? The increasing evidence, as we've heard today, of tritium is an example of a cumulative effect that results from this OPG proposal that could see Bruce Nuclear Plant, the Western Waste Management Facility, this DGR, and a used fuel DGR, all here in Bruce County. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission states that tritium can pose a health risk if it is ingested through drinking water or food, inhaled or absorbed through the skin. This is from their website. In 2011, CNSC set an objective for tritium in groundwater and stated that a study is required on the uncertainty in measurements conducted as part of their monitoring programs. In 2013, just a couple of months ago, CNSC disagreed with OPG when they had told this joint review panel that tritium levels had stabilized at the Western Waste site. As a displayed figure shows, tritium in the bedrock is still going up. CNSC states that the upward trend may be an indication that the link between high tritium concentrations in the middle sand aquifer and the bedrock is more extensive than originally thought. Tritium levels in drinking water in parts of Bruce County is 400% higher than the provincial average. And in Southampton, the tritium levels have continued to rise in the past 4 years. That's, this slide's from the Bruce Nuclear Environmental Monitoring Program, page 51 of this year's report. In deciding on the merits of OPG's proposal for burying radioactive waste of every toxicity, size, and description beside Lake Huron, I urge this joint review panel to consider, among many other aspects, the questions I'm posing now. Has OPG acted in good faith and exercised their best efforts to inform the citizens of Kincardine and all other Bruce County residents of the potential hazards and dangers involved with this project? Did OPG notify all residents of the health, environmental, social, economic, cultural effects of this proposal in an open, transparent, clear, honest, and complete manner as described in the OPG NWMO mandate? Were terms of the hosting agreement created for this proposal fair to all Bruce County residents? Was the phone poll a true democratic process that is required for determining support for a decision of this magnitude and longevity? Have the public participation methods used by OPG throughout Bruce County communities provided honest, shared decision-making with all citizens impacted by this proposed DGR. This is the most assuring statement that OPG and WMO can make. The DGR project will likely not result in any significant adverse environmental effects. No significant adverse effects on the health and safety of workers, the public, or non-human biota are anticipated. I will end with two questions posed by Dr. Stella Swanson. One of the central problems in the debate about the nuclear fuel cycle is ignorance. Scientists simply do not know what the effects of chronic exposure to low-level radiation are, either in people or in other biota. We will only begin to know for sure after several more decades have passed, and a large population of exposed people have been studied. In the meantime, we have to ask, do we really want to live in this uncertainty? What risks are we willing to accept as a society? Just want to end by saying that we have three young grandchildren, and they love the beach and the water, and I don't believe any risk is acceptable. Thank you.